Welcome to Leadership Rewired. Our mission is to disrupt traditional leadership development by fostering a community of resilient, growth-minded individuals who drive their own destinies and lead effectively through change without sacrificing their well-being. Two former colleagues and current friends, Allison and Dean Martin, invite you to join them for an honest conversation that brings a personal perspective to the issues of leadership.
Welcome to Leadership Rewired podcast. I am Allison Allen. My co-host is Dean Martin. And we welcome you to our community that we're building of resilient, disruptive, self-evolved leaders. Mm-hmm. So this podcast today is about introducing ourselves. We officially launched the podcast on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. The results and the feedback has been super, super positive. Both the video piece and the audio piece. And one of the things that we've heard constantly through the feedback is that people want to know a little bit more about who we are. You know, go a little bit below the surface. They can look us up on LinkedIn. They kind of believe we're kind of certified and maybe know a little bit, but they're looking for sort of that personal connection. So we thought, you know, in response to our community that we're trying to build and the audience that we're trying to influence, that we'll respond to this. Mm-hmm. And so our next podcast is really about who is Allison and who is Dean.
Yeah.
So, you know, Dean, I'm going to let you start actually, sure. And say, you know, walk us through your career and talk a little bit about how you got where you are today.
Well, I was going to say, in response to the question of who is Allison and who is Dean, this is the first of a 95-hour podcast, you know what I mean?
Because that's how long it'll take.
Yeah, at least, just for the introductions. But and so I believe with other people as well. I mean, isn't that beautiful about, you know, you and I are both executive coaches. We work with people and we can be in relationships with people, and there's always something new and beautiful to discover. So I trust that even people who know me will hear this and go, yep, we knew these things about him. And then there might be something new. And similarly, we get to discover something new about ourselves as we get older. So, this won't be 75 hours. God help us all if that were the case.
Well, you said 92. So now.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So that's one thing I'm not good at is short-term memory when it comes to numbers. Okay. So that's something for people to be aware of. But career-wise, so I grew up in South Africa, in Cape Town. And at that time, like when was it? I finished school in the late 80s and then studied. I don't think I really even knew anybody working in psychology or as a therapist or anything like that. And the reason why I say this is that I think if I had, I might have pursued a path along some kind of psychotherapeutic counseling or therapy. But what was offered to me was teaching, a bursary, a full kind of scholarship equivalent of becoming a teacher. And I love children. And teaching is naturally within me. So that's what I did, Allison. I studied for 4 years. I taught for 7. I taught primary school, which is what it's called in South Africa, which was 7, 8, and 9-year-olds. You teach them everything: literacy, numeracy, life, art, physical education, a lot. I really enjoyed it. I love those kids. Still, sometimes I think, you know, and this is early 90s, there's still occasionally some of those who are these little sweaty 8-year-olds running around the playground who now reach out to me on LinkedIn and they, you know, I'm an actuary working in this bank in South Africa or whatever. I loved the teaching, and I also just wanted something a little bit more that would be, I think maybe a little bit more intellectually challenging, and that would help me to have an impact on a wider scale, on a broader scale. I wrote a textbook with a co-author about literacy. I got another qualification, but after 7 years, it made sense for me to move to London, and I lived and worked there for 14 years. And that's when I ended up moving from being a trainer in a call center to a management consultant for 7 years. And that was, if I think back on my consultancy years, probably some of my hardest working years because there was a lot of travel involved. I was working with public and private sector clients all up and down the United Kingdom, and also a huge amount of learning. And that's what I love to learn. I love to become good at something. And so working with clients where I was, running, whether it was coaching or running certifications around emotional intelligence or designing facilitating a workshop or designing it. I was learning the practice of consultancy and much of what I've done for many years in leadership development, but also the content. So it was a real deep dive into organizational effectiveness and leadership styles and resilience and team effectiveness and all that stuff. I just couldn't get enough of it. I was just, every day I was like, wow, I learned this new thing about effective teams. And here's this model around innovation in the public sector. And here's this big, new, amazing study on collaboration. So I was just learning and working pretty hard, and also leading a team of consultants. So I was having to put my leadership expertise into practice, and then moved in-house, as we would say, into two really large organizations. That's where you and I met, at Bloomberg.
Yep.
That's where I was working in a leadership development space. So full-time within that organization, doing similar stuff: executive coaching of aspiring leaders, designing programs around leadership and team effectiveness, partnering with people within HR and across the business as well. And so I've done that probably for the last 10, 12 years or so, in large organizations and also smaller tech companies. And now I find myself in a lovely, free and also scary position of running my own business. So, safety and freedom, two sides of the same coin, but really enjoying working with clients, building my practice at a wider wingspan as an executive coach, really focusing on leaders within the tech space, but also those that just maybe think differently, feel a little bit differently, and need some getting unstuckness. So that's where I am, and I'm here with you today doing this podcast too. So that's the brief version.
Well, I'm super happy about you being here doing this podcast with me, because I think one thing we have in common, we have lots of things in commmen, is that we both are always in the mindset of learning, which I think is really important for leaders. So grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I basically, I want to say the most of my childhood raised by a single mom. And I was one of four. I was the oldest. So lots of responsibility put on me as the oldest person. I remember often I used to collect all my siblings at school, and we had to walk home because we were latchkey kids. And my responsibility was to get them into the house and to get them, washed and focused on homework and fed. Yeah. That was my job. And I remember taking that super seriously. I basically went to college. When I was going into college, I was one of those folks, like a lot of folks who grow up in families where, in the South, where, marriage and family is everything. And I had plans on going to high school, of which, by the way, in high school, I was like crazy. I was on track. Was a cheerleader. I was in the band. I was in the drill team.
You were in the band. What did you play in the band?
Yeah. I was a flag girl. Flags and rifles. Okay. So in high school, I kind of I felt like I got free. And I just kind of got myself involved, and I was in clubs, and I was like pretty much a higher end B, lower end A student. So you would have thought I'd be going to college, right? And taking it. But I was just like, no, I'm just going to go to community college and get married because, my mom was, I wouldn't call her strict, but I didn't even start dating till I had left high school. And so I had a boyfriend and I was like, I want to get married and I'm going to go to junior college and I want to have kids. And my mom had a different plan. She was like, no, you're going to school. Yeah. So I went to school in the South to start. And then I finished up a degree in New York, actually. And there's a whole backstory of how I got to New York, which we can talk about at some point. But moved to New York, professional career started off in risk management. And I very quickly knew that I did not want to be in risk management. There was something about binders and paper and being at a desk just did not work for me. Okay. Somehow I was fortunate enough to get a job working on the help desk in the IT department. So that was really super cool because I got a chance to establish the help desk and write the practices and there was something really good about that. I was given this responsibility to create. I mean, I'd never done a help desk, but this person was entrusting me at a major insurance brokerage firm to establish a help desk in an IT department. But I was like, I'm going to go for it because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. Yeah. A year later, it was pretty successful, well established, and I said, I want to train people. And she was like, yeah, let's go for it. She was like an amazing boss. But anyway, she gave me the opportunity to train people. And I was training people on IT mainframe work, which was like, it was interesting. I got a chance to travel. I was going all over the country. But then I realized I don't really want to teach technology. I want to work with humans. And so I would say that is when my career sort of officially started working with humans. I moved into McKinsey, which was an amazing opportunity for me. And I was focused on change management internally. And that immediately turned into learning and knowledge management, where I then started working a little bit with external clients. Left there, went to a company called Cushman & Wakefield. And I did a lot of work around OD and performance management. And then I would say that's when things just started moving fast. I joined Deutsche Bank, did a lot of work around talent, leadership, learning, executive coaching, went to Bloomberg, met you and that team. I used to say that the best company I ever worked for was McKinsey until I joined Bloomberg. Right. I feel like Bloomberg for me was culture. It was team. I had some of my best learning around leadership at Bloomberg. It was like one of the best experiences I ever had. Left Bloomberg, went into tech, and that's like a whole podcast. I went into tech, and that was where I got introduced to politics and, real politics in ways I've never, ever experienced.
Like office politics.
But office politics, people politics, right. People one-upping each other. Again, when you're coming out of an environment where team is the center of everything and get thrown into that, you learn a lot. But I was some of my best leadership learnings in my experiences in tech. I'm a mom of two, one that just finished college and one that's still in college. They live in New York and the apartment in New York, and I live in Nevada. And that's me. That's sort of my career background. Let's talk a little bit about values, and what influences our decisions around some of the, like, if you think about your personal and your professional life, what are some core values and how do they influence you and your decisions? And I'm happy to go first, but also happy to throw it over to you.
I would like you to go first, but before I'm going to invite you to respond to your own question.
Yeah.
So generous of me. The one thing I do want to say is what I appreciate about you. I was talking about my teaching and all the stuff that I've done and then what you've done. One of the things that does not surprise me if I think about you, looking after your younger siblings or whatever, is that you take things seriously and you make things happen. Mm-hmm. And that's actually how this podcast even happened. That's what I want to say is that, remember when you and I met, we had stayed in touch since Bloomberg, which was 8 years ago.
Gosh,
but then
yes.
we met and we hung out and we had drinks and you were like, Dean, we should start a podcast. And one of my values, that's what makes me think of this. One of my values is being option oriented and risk taking.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, sure. But in my mind, I thought, yeah, we could do a podcast. We could do a cookery show. We could start our own management consultancy. We could start writing a book. We could train poodles. Like I went in 100 directions. And I thought, yeah, sure, Allison. Yeah, let's start a podcast. Lo and behold, Allison Allen, Dean, what are we doing? What are we doing? Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. So I don't know if that's even one of your values, but it's certainly something I appreciate about you. That you take things seriously. You see an opportunity and you're like, right, that's the mountain.
Yeah.
Watch me.
Yeah.
And you're off.
No, it's interesting because I just had my Hogan debrief, and one of the things that came out of that was that I will have an idea, and if it's actually something I think I can make happen, especially with the right people.
Yes.
I do tend to just sort of like run, right?
Good.
And I'll check in with folks and try to figure out the rest of it, but I will try to run.
Yeah.
No, I also think it's kind of, I don't know if, interesting that our paths were kind of tracking the same, right? Coming out of corporate around the same time, reflecting on what our next move is, trying to figure out that, and by the way, I think we're like fucking super smart, right? I think we look at leadership and people. We care deeply about people and teams. And, I think we think about these things, in similar ways, but also in ways that aren't similar.
No, correct.
But it's about helping people do better. Yes. And I think that's something we have in common. So I think that was also the motivation for getting it done.
Sure,
it's like,
for sure.
Come on, let's just do this.
Yeah.
But on the values point, look, I think one of my core values is that and I think I learned this late in my personal life, but certainly in my corporate life is, one of the things I value in corporate is investing in people and building teams. Mm-hmm. I think, and also just wanting things to make sense. Mm-hmm. Like I love connecting dots. And so I value people who want to grow. I value teams that want to do things together. And I value connecting the dots so that things make sense. And I value people who dissent, like people who are in situations where they can see something better or they can see a gap in something and saying it. So I value those things. And they influence me because I feel like they make experiences more shared and not the experiences that feel like there's a person and everything is sort of circling around them.
Right.
And so those are the things that really, really matter to me. In terms of my family, obviously you value your family. And over the years, I think my family, and it's something that I bring them up all the time because literally it's something I'm growing even now. Yeah, they're in their 20s and I'm still growing. Yeah. But I really feel like, I'm trying to value this sort of designing your own life concept right now. And I wish I was doing that when I was raising my children, because I think I would have struck a much more balanced life. And so my point to get to here is I'm valuing having this sort of like balance in my personal and my professional life that I wish I had with my kids. Yeah. When I was raising my kids. And now, obviously, I'm trying to value more time with them. And, I joke about it, but it's true, whatever moment, ounce, opportunity when they want to reach out and they need something, like I'm wanting to gravitate toward that. Yeah. And so I value people and wanting people to have this really balance between their personal and their professional, because it's really important. And over the years, you will get down the road and regret some things. And I would love to live in a world where people didn't regret anything, that they really create experiences for themselves, that they feel empowered in those experiences. And in essence, just start, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but start off literally designing their lives from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't know if that if that gives you sort of an understanding. What about you? What are the things that value and sort of drive your influence and decisions?
Sure. I will answer that. Let me ask you though, you were talking about, this balance and wanting to work with people so that they don't feel like they have regrets. Is there anything that you could share that you would say is like a regret of yours that has shaped you, that sort of shows up in who I'm talking to today?
I regret not asking for help. Like I was living in New York and I'm married. I'm not married anymore, but I was married. I had 2 kids. I literally and I was working like big jobs that took a lot of energy. I mean, we were at Bloomberg together, how everything was a priority there. Every place I've worked, that their work was a priority. And so I regret not trying to figure out what my resources were.
Right.
I was trying to be a mom, a wife, a leader, a teammate, often I would like lose myself in that whole thing because I'm trying to be everything to everybody else.
Yeah.
There were lots of times, and you've heard me say this, where I made the decision to be at work and not at home because you assume the kids will be okay, or you assume things keep moving and you'll make it up over the weekend.
Right.
And if I step back for a second and have the real honest dialogue with myself, I regret not asking for help. My mom would come up when she could, or my siblings would help out. But it wasn't like helping with the kids. By help, I mean asking for a coach or asking for someone who can help me look at my life and put it in order. It's not, when people hear asking for help, they assume with your family life.
Right,
That's not even what I mean. It's like, I got introduced to therapy way late, I think. I'm glad I finally got introduced to it, but I got introduced to it late. Yeah. I think often, like, if I had had a therapist during that time, I probably would have been able to sort through things differently. So I think I was coaching people and hearing these same things and giving them lots of different things to think about, but I wasn't taking advantage of any of that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, look, I have great, amazing relationships with my children. I proactively work on them every day because I love them very much and I want to be in their lives and they matter to me. I have a decent relationship with my ex-husband. But I have to think about the fact that I should have just asked for help. And help for me would have been in the form of a coach or a therapist or a counselor or somebody just to help me look at all of it. Yeah. And I think I felt like that 8-year-old who had to take over getting the kids home. I think I kept reverting back to her, I've got to have all of it answered. And you don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's...
Sorry, did I just make this really personal?
Good. I hope so. Do you feel okay about that?
Oh, totally.
Good.
Because I say this all the time. I think I wish we could create leaders that recognize that they have to be as involved, or not create leaders, that sounds wrong. I hope we build a community of leaders that recognize that they have to be thinking about themselves on a personal level.
Yeah.
And in some cases on a selfish level and also themselves at work.
Yeah.
And, and I wish, that's the kind of leader. That's why I want us talking about well-being and making time to, invest in yourself on all of those skills, because I don't think it was talked about enough when I was, it might have even been talked about when I was in that part of my career, but I just didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate you sharing that. I don't think it is talked about enough. I think if people, I think we're scared about, certainly in a corporate space, we're scared of going too much in a way that feels like you're trying to be like a psychologist or ask somebody about their childhood wounds.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to hit the quarterly milestone. So just suck it up and go. And also that's why you and I connect. And this is why this is important for us to say, yeah, still hit your quarterly milestone. Thank you very much. And also, what's the benefit to you to being able to understand and love who you are, and to see your whole life with sort of an appreciative view of like, how have all of my life experiences shaped me, and where have they guided me towards helpful decisions, or where maybe have I done some things that I, now knowing what I do, I would have done something differently. But I was doing the best I could do. I know you and I believe that when we coach people. Whenever I sit in front of a coachee, I think to myself, without a doubt, they are doing the best they can right now. With how they understand their resources. And our role is to sit with them in that, to meet them in that space that's safe. I'm holding my hands up like a nice little container here.
Yeah.
And then to imagine what might, to call forth something that's a bit more visionary or imaginative or hopeful, to look realistically at what could get in the way of you achieving that. And then to consider new ways. How do we move forward through this? People are really doing their best. So, whether they are leaders 100%. Even now thinking, oh, I've really screwed up with my team, or I made a bad decision at work, or I'm still reeling from having been terminated 3 jobs ago. That's okay. That's part of you. Bring it with you. It's part of it.
100%.
How do we move forward? And I think, I'll continue sharing that what I've just done on a big sort of like a, what do you call it? An ad lib here is that I am option oriented, and I like to, one of my values is about is finding meaning and looking for opportunities of growth wherever I am. And I think another value that's critical to me in order to do that is creativity, is play. I think through being creative, and that doesn't mean just get out the pens and pencils and the sticky notes on the flip chart, but to imagine something in a playful, light-hearted kind of what-if way is how we get to know ourselves. And that's how I've got to know myself as well. Whenever I sense in myself a tightening, a hardening, a desire to return to a very firm state of, well, this is just how it is, and this is just who I am. I notice that and then go, okay, what is that? How is that keeping you safe? And how might some relaxing into that and some creative play? You don't have to take action yet, Dean, but even just some other imagining of, well, what if? Or what would someone else do? Or if you could do it differently, what would it look like? To have that playful interest, like open-ended way of imagining, that's also an important value for me. That's also the people who really struggle with that. I struggle with them too. I have to work very hard when people go, no solution, won't work. It won't work. I can't do it. I'm like, oh, baby Jesus, that's when I'm really digging deep into myself going, it's okay. They're doing their best. That's why they can't see their way forward. So, I would say just one other value that I would share that is really critical to who I am, and I really this about myself is my tolerance. And that sounds like a sort of like a grumpy aunt who's just sort of permitting naughty behavior. It's not. Tolerance for me is more around being able to sort of love people wherever they're at, or to be able to withstand situations that are uncomfortable. It's okay. Where's the value in this? What can this be teaching me? that leans into a value of mine, which is kindness and love and compassion towards others, and not needing to, make other people be wrong in order for me to be right, but just to go, oh, I think like this. Curious. My teammate thinks like that. Oh, this political party thinks this. Curious. Those ones do not. As a value, that helps me. It also gives me well-being rather than getting all like wound up and anxious that I'm not surrounded by people who agree and concur with me, but to go, okay, I like this diversity of thought and ideas. So those are probably some of the values that stick around for me, or that show up in much of what I've done in my life.
The value of tolerance, like how has that shown up and not worked in corporate America for you?
How is it not?
And like, can you get, I don't know. I mean, I'm asking, has there been any situation where, because I mean, there's so many places where you can go with tolerance, right? Sure. So like, has that value for you that feels good to you ever not worked in a role or in a situation that you can share, that you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah,
you
no,
can
that's
say no.
Nice. Oh, I like having to think about this. Thank you. I think how I would respond, how I would sort of position this tolerance is around a sort of being non-judgmental. And I think where I have maybe sometimes acted upon this too much is when I have maybe stayed at companies longer than I should have. Where I've gone, well, the head of HR, they're doing their best. It's okay. God bless them. Can do this. And I stay. And maybe I might, I'm still glad I did that. You don't need to vilify people for their behavior or their actions or whatever. But I think it hasn't always served me, Allison, because I can stay in uncomfortable positions for me longer than I need to. So I would say I don't want to dial down my tolerance or being non-judgmental. What I actually need to dial up next to that is around a real sense of, is this allowing me? Is this allowing to be his best? Because
and I think that I was just going to say, I think that's why it's really important to understand what your values are, and how they drive you to perform or to be in organizations or to be in situations, right? And to your point around dialing up and dialing down, you might just want to give people a beat on that one because they may not understand what that means.
Understand either. Let me try. I think it's about, appreciating that our behaviors aren't binary. It's not like today I'm kind and tomorrow I am not. Or today I will be action oriented and then there's only one speed to that. That we're all just, it's incredibly nuanced. And when we are acting upon our values, to be aware of what are all these different things that really matter to me that orient my behavior, and when can I be intentional of when I'm actually flowing this, and to what extent. So it's not just like, yes, I will be tolerant today or I won't, but like how much and in combination with what. So just being really like skillful in how we are bringing ourselves and being aware of what's making me work in this way, what's making me lead in this way today. Yes, I may be a certain way, but is that quick decision-making skill necessary right now? No, maybe not. Maybe actually I also need my appreciation of diverse thinking. That's what I want to bring to the forefront, or that's what I want to like dial up as though they're different dials on like a sound mixing desk.
I think figuring out what you value, figuring out how that, drives you and impacts you. And then associating that with your experiences, whether they be personal or professional, I think it's super important. If you're in situations where, your values are not being supported and you're being triggered, or in some cases, like it's causing all kinds of, call it emotion or feelings that are not necessarily ones in which you want to embrace, then I think it's important to figure out how you take control of that situation, whether it be dialing up or dialing down, or choosing different experiences to have. Because values are important and they're there. Even if you've never sat down and done an exercise, they're there. There are things that you care deeply about that matter to you that are guideposts for which you live your life. I think it's a good idea to try to figure out what they are and figure out how, you may be in a situation at work right now and you can't quite put your finger on it, but something's not right. Check your values and you might really actually figure out, okay, this is working against this value for me. That's what's not right. And what's in my control to do something about it or make a different choice. Biggest life lesson, personal or professional?
Me?
Yeah.
I think my biggest life lesson is still, I'm living it every day, which is to trust myself. And that can sound a little bit like, screw everyone else, this is just me and I'm going to double down. I think it's just more around, I've got a lovely a mentor, a coach mentor, who a long time ago I was coaching, and she was observing a session of mine, and she said to me, Dean, the more you trust your intuition, the better you coach. And that was probably a decade ago, and I still think about what Kat said to me. And so that's my biggest life lesson, which is I know stuff. I've got skills, I've got knowledge, I've got a bunch of theory in my head. There's a practice. What are the practical ways in which I go about my life? All of this that's known and experienced. And actually, I do find my way, whether I'm coaching somebody face to face or on a Zoom, or whether I'm contemplating a big decision, or whether I'm considering what my next year looks like. When I can quieten a little bit and actually go, I trust who I am. I trust my strengths. I trust my heart, and just to listen to that and rely on that intuition. Not as the only decision-making point, but to really listen more to that voice. I work very, very hard at that. And that's usually when if I think about times I've done really exceptional work, when you recall, wow, what was an amazing conversation you had, or a time when you really did something outstanding at work, or you were up against it and you would say, wow, that was one of my better moments. What's at the source of each of those things when I recall them is the fact that I've trusted myself and I've gone, no, it's almost, and even as I'm doing it now, people who are listening can't see. It's almost like I close my eyes and I go, where do I need to go? Where's the biggest pain? Where's the biggest issue? What needs my attention? And I can go. And you?
Biggest life lessons.
Allison.
I have three.
Oh, nice. Good. Of course you have three. I love the fact that you have three. Tell me.
Organizations are going to take care of organizations.
Yeah.
And people need to realize that. So think of your roles and your responsibilities as investments in yourself.
Nice.
And growth for you. Organizations are going to take care of organizations. They just are. And I think the last few years have certainly taught us that. I'm not saying you can't be loyal. I'm not saying you can't be committed or being super excited that you're working somewhere that you've always wanted to work. But just remember, organizations are going to take care of organizations. So look at the role, look at your responsibilities, as learning, professional development for you. Things that you can take away, things that you can grow in, things that you can expand in. Second one is that often people think when they get into roles or when they take on additional responsibility, they have panic and fear about whether or not they can do it. Even though they got the job or they've been given the responsibility, they just have panic and fear. And so they worry. And the thing I would say there is that you are enough.
Yeah.
You got the job. You landed the role. You have everything you need. Just lean into it. You are enough. You have what you need in order to be successful. And last but not least is that one of the biggest game changers for leaders is active listening. Not listening for what you want to hear or the key points in which you can actually resonate, but actively listen to your people in one-on-ones, in meetings.
Yeah.
Don't always be the person who is talking. People will tell you things that you will need to hear and things that you will not get them to say to you on other times. If you are acting and listening, you can hear those notes beyond the conversation that will tell you where people are and what they need from you. It's the biggest skill that I think leaders need to lean into.
Yeah. When has there been a time, if you think about the active listening one, when has that life lesson for you been most poignant or obvious?
God, I mean, I've been very fortunate in my career to, grow up the, career ladder all the way up to SVP. I think there were people on my team who I thought were in and bought into the vision and who were literally telling me in their one-on-ones they weren't. And I'm trying to get them there. Or I'm just like, but no, you got that right, but you didn't get this right. But they're literally telling me in their one-on-one conversations that they're just not bought into whatever it is we're trying to build.
Yeah.
And you keep those people around too long because you believe that you can sell them or you can get them to think differently. You're not listening to what they're saying. You're just listening to the things that they're kind of saying. And you think with, coaching and feedback, you can get them there. And in fact, those are the very people who cause you problems when you're trying to execute. They don't move as fast. Their team notices that they're not moving as fast. They're not in your camp and you think they are. And it backfires. It backfires. And it's because you're moving, you're a leader, you're trying to get things done. You feel like you said all the magical words, everybody's gotten it. In one-on-ones, in those conversations, people will tell you whether or not they've gotten it. So actively listening to what people are saying. When people play things back to you, do they really understand? Are they really bought in? Not everyone's going to be engaged in your vision, even people who work in your team.
Yeah.
And active listening is a way for you to understand who they are and where they are and whether or not you can do anything about it. You may not be able to get them where you need them to be.
Yeah. So like listening out for what kind of support or extra attention do they need from you, but you kind of, your ears have pricked up and you're like, let me just lean in there. Let me just check.
Yeah. I the best question I love asking people sometimes is play it back to me.
Yeah.
Or tell me I'm laying this out for you. So tell me what I'm missing.
Oh, that's a nice one.
And people are like, oh no, you got it. You're good. I guess I understand. You're thinking it's attitude when it's fact that they're just not there. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I love this. I always learn a thing from you. Bless you. Allison, just as we start to wrap up here, on all of our other podcasts, we do this What's a Personal and Honest Truth about whatever the topic is. So let me hit you with what's a personal and honest truth about this podcast? That's a
the whole entire
curveball.
podcast.
Yeah. Pardon?
No. I think the personal and honest truth about this, about sharing today and learning from each other and even building this podcast is that when you stop learning, I think you stop growing, and in some cases stop living.
Yeah.
And I think you need to I want to find ways always to extend myself and get better.
Yeah.
Here I am, both my kids, literally, one in college, one moving into her own apartment. Most people would look at that as like I no longer having any opportunities to learn how to be a good mom.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm so excited about this new phase of motherhood and what that's going to mean for me and what that's going to mean for our relationship. And I'm excited about that. And so I just think when you stop learning, you kind of just like, you need to figure out why you're not. And I think we're put on this earth to continue to continue to expand and learn and grow and stretch ourselves. Yeah. And so I just think that's it. That's all I would say to that. What about you?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even know I was going to ask you that question. So no, I certainly don't have an answer myself.
You have to answer because you put me on the spot.
I know. I could see your face. You're like, holy crap, Dean.
I'm like, oh God, the whole podcast is personal and honest truth. No.
I like doing that though. People listening should know I usually like to. In fact, every question I ask Allison is unknown to her and certainly to me, maybe only a minute before.
Wait, that's not in the script.
What script? A personal and honest truth about this podcast. I think the one is that connecting with you, Allison, has really revitalized me. Where I would say for the past year or two, my work has been hard. And to be with somebody who thinks I would say in a complementary way, I think we think differently and we also align. So there's enough diversity there that I'm learning from you. But that has just been so good for my heart and my soul and for my learning.
Oh, wow.
And then I would say the other personal and honest truth is that the reason why we have these sorts of conversations, because we could also just be having them on the phone, is to invite other people in to perhaps revitalize them. That's why it's Leadership Rewired. How might we do it differently? Are there leaders? Are there people out there going, I feel a bit like that too? And I want to think differently about how I lead. And I sometimes feel like I'm the only one on the leadership team who really thinks in this sort of way of really being human-centered and wresting the tension between wanting to perform and drive and be quick for the organization, and then sometimes going, it feels like that's flying in the face of my values. How do I do that? So if anytime you and I are having a chat, this allows somebody to go, okay, I'm not mad, or actually, oh my God, this is beautiful. Other people feel like me, or I know an action I can take in order to be even more effective, to be this alive person, to be growing, to be resilient, then that will make me incredibly satisfied and happy. That's really what I would wish for people very deeply.
I love that. Let's go into that. I love that.
Okay, my friend.
All right. So we are going to wrap this up right now. Hopefully this podcast gave you guys a little more understanding of who we are. I'm not gonna promise ever that I'll stop talking about my kids, and
please don't.
And I'll try to weave in even talking about my two Frenchies that drive me crazy and cost a lot of money. But anyway, we just want to continue to show you who we are, because I think that's a huge part of who we are as human beings and how we want to connect with you. So please like, comment, subscribe. Please in the comments, just give us feedback, because we want to get better and better. This is our 7th one, I think.
Yeah.
We have so much in the hopper, I guess is what people would normally say. I don't know if that's the right word I would use, but anyway, we've got so much lined up, and we've got so many folks that are interested in like getting on the podcast with us. And so we're super excited about where this is going to go. So we appreciate you. And as always, thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Dean.